Hey Crafty fam, it's Alex Vanover and welcome back to my craft room. In this video, we're going to talk about the differences between using water-based screen printing and HTV. But before we talk about those differences, let's talk about kind of the process of what they are because they are fundamentally different. And when I say screen printing, I'm talking about water-based screen printing. There's also Plastisol, like more traditional screen printing, but that's not the kind of screen printing that I do. So before you go any further, make sure that you know that this is water-based screen printing. So anyway, water-based screen printing is basically using adhesive vinyl as a stencil, applying that stencil to a mesh screen, and passing ink through the screen to create the design on the shirt. So basically, you are applying ink to the shirt to create your design versus using HTV or heat transfer vinyl. That's the actual product that you cut on a Cricut machine or any kind of die cutting machine. You weed it and you apply it directly to the shirt. So by definition, that leads us to our first difference, and that is the texture of the shirt. So screen printing ink leaves a very light texture on the shirt. You can definitely feel the difference between the fabric and the ink, but not much. Whereas screen printing HTV actually stays on the surface of the shirt. So it never really sinks into the fibers because the vinyl is actually still on top of the surface. So if you are one of those people that is a little bit bothered by the texture of HTV on your shirt, screen printing may be a great option for you. That's not something that bothers me, but it is something to keep in mind. Or if you have a customer, if you run a business and you have a customer that is not a big fan of the texture of HTV on their shirt, screen printing may be something to consider. Another instance where this is sometimes important is when you have a big design that's taking up the whole front of your shirt. Like let's say you cut the entire United States out of a piece of HTV and stuck it on the front of your shirt. You're probably going to feel a little bit of a plasticky feel on the front of your shirt just because it is such a large design. So that may be an instance where you want to consider screen printing instead of HTV. So the second difference between using HTV and screen printing is the surfaces that they can be applied on. So of course they're both great for fabrics like t-shirts. Both HTV and screen printing work beautifully on t-shirts and fabrics that are cotton, polyester, and things like that. But the thing is that screen printing can be a little bit more versatile because it works better, in my opinion, on textured fabrics such as burlap, ribbed t-shirts or tank tops, and even shirts like that are waffled with those little squares all over them. I think the screen printing works a little bit better for that. You can use HTV on those things, but in my opinion, it's a little bit more of a pain. So I would choose screen printing for textured items like that as well. And you can also screen print on items that are not fabric. When you use acrylic screen printing ink, you can screen print on things like cardboard and wood and paper and all kinds of other stuff like that too. I know that a lot of people use HTV on those surfaces as well. In my opinion, I would not do that because I think that that's a great use for adhesive vinyl, but I know that it's done, and so it's totally up to you. The third difference between HTV and screen printing is the time that it takes to finish the project. With HTV, as soon as you press the HTV onto the shirt, it's ready to be worn. It can't be washed for 24 hours, but it can be worn immediately. Whereas with screen printing ink, there is some dry time because the ink is similar to paint, so it does take a little bit of time to dry. Now, if you were really in a time crunch, you could dry your design using a heat gun and then heat set it right after that to be worn. But for me, I like to let my ink set overnight if possible. And that's because if there's a thick application of ink, the surface of it can be dry while underneath it may not be quite as dry, and I'm afraid of smudging my design if I heat set it too soon. So if you're in a time crunch, I would recommend HTV over screen printing. The fourth difference between HTV and screen printing is the supplies that you need to do your project. With HTV, it's a little more straightforward. You need a vinyl cutter and a piece of HTV, a weeding tool, and a heat source, which are all the normal things that you need in a vinyl project. With screen printing, there are a few extra pieces that you need to complete your project. So of course you need your vinyl cutter, and then you're going to create your stencil using adhesive vinyl, which is different between the two of these. Then you need a screen that you're going to use to apply the stencil to. You also need a squeegee, ink, and you still need a heat source because, as I talked about in the last point, screen printing ink, in order to be permanent, does need to be heat set. So you still need a heat source, but just like HTV, you can use an iron, an easy press, or a heat press to heat set those items. So there are some differences in what you need in order to complete these projects, but I wouldn't let the materials that you need for screen printing intimidate you because honestly they can all be found on Amazon and they're really pretty cheap to get started. Once you spend like $40 or so, you have most of what you need to do screen printing. So it's just kind of a preference thing there. Now that you know the differences between using HTV and screen printing, let's talk about when to use each one of them. For 3 or 4 shirts or less, I would go ahead and just use HTV. I also think it's a little bit quicker for multicolored designs. I would choose screen printing when there are 4 or more shirts, just because I think it's a little bit more work to set up the screen for a group of shirts. So in my opinion, it's better for like bulk. Some people consider that bulk. I don't know if I would, but I would be doing multiple shirts of the same design in order to do screen printing over HTV. I also think that it's a better choice when you're doing large numbers of shirts because adhesive vinyl is cheaper per sheet than HTV. So even if you have to use 3 or 4 screens and use 3 or 4 sheets of adhesive vinyl, that still is sometimes cheaper than 1 sheet of HTV. If you want to learn more about using either one, I have videos right here that I will link so you can get more information to learn how to use both. I hope this video answered all your questions about both processes, but if you have any more questions, please feel free to drop those in the comments because you know that I'd be happy to answer them for you. If you haven't already, please make sure that you subscribe right here to DIY Alex and ring the bell right next to subscribe so that you never miss a new upload. I hope we can craft again soon.